Welcome to our webcast. I'm David Folk Thomas, and if you don't know yet, we're in the 21st century, so it's time to start exercising the correct way. And the incorrect way is to exercise and give yourself an injury or get an injury. We're going to be talking about injury prevention, how you can avoid injuries, whether you're working out, weightlifting, whether you're playing tennis, hockey, basketball, any of those activities. And joining me are two experts on the subject. I've got Jim Ramsey. He's the athletic trainer for the New York Rangers hockey team, and sitting next to Jim is Dr. Jonathan Glashow. He's a sports medicine orthopedic surgeon at Lenox Hill Hospital in New York City. He's also a consultant to the New York Rangers as well as other Olympic athletes. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. And Dr. Glashow, can I call you Jonathan?
Please do.
Okay, let's start out. What are some common injuries that people incur from working out, whether they're doing it the right or wrong way?
Sure. It's a good question. I think I like to group them in two ways. I mean, there's the overuse kind of injuries that we see, which may be known as a tendonitis, like a tennis elbow or a shoulder tendonitis. And then there's the macro-traumatic injury when somebody lifts a weight incorrectly and their biceps ruptures or they dislocate their shoulder. Most commonly, we see those overuse injuries, people lifting improperly, lifting too much, not resting enough, not stretching, etc. And they're the most common. Occasionally we see ruptured muscles, strained ligaments in the knee from improper technique and excessive weight with improper technique. So I think group both ways. The more common one would be the overuse injuries that we see at the gyms. The hockey club probably sees a few more of the macrotraumatic ones and gross ligament injuries and fractures and things of that sort.
The macrotraumatic, that would maybe be when you hear the popping sound,
right,
or the breaking sound.
But see blood.
You see blood. Jim, Jonathan alluded to, you work with the Rangers. What kind of injuries do you see with them? More of those intense injuries?
We do definitely see a lot of more acute type of stuff in terms of the sprains and strains. A strain being a muscle injury, and a sprain being a ligament injury. We have a lot of knee injuries. Mike Richter, for example, this year sprained his ACL, had surgery. Goaltender for the Rangers, excellent goaltender for the Rangers. Had ACL reconstructions, doing great. And then we also have a lot of strains, the muscular injury. A lot of players today in hockey are having what we call athletic pubalgia. Big word. Basically, it means that they're injuring or straining the lower oblique muscles in their stomach. Why, we haven't figured that out yet. There's all numerous studies, but we do see a lot of major muscle and ligamentous injuries in hockey.
Now, when you're setting out to prevent injuries, if you're going to the gym and you have a mindset, okay, I'm going to do this right, are injury prevention techniques more important for those gradual injuries? What was the big word used? Macro.
You like that one?
Yeah, I like that word. But it seems like, for a hockey team, it's hard to prevent an injury if a guy's smashing into the boards, so to speak. I imagine you can, try to build the muscles up enough to negate that. But overall, for those gradual straining, spraining injuries, is that where this is most important?
I think it's for both, Dave. Really, I think you can prepare yourself and your body for the impact of a hit, or you can prepare yourself for the weight training. I think there's several key points. One being a gradual increase in weight. Really, the first thing I should say is warm up. I think far too many people, maybe like yourself, run to the gym, don't have time to do that.
I do it correctly.
But you probably, but the other guys,
all the time.
You will after this.
That don't warm up, they go in, rush to the weights, do far too heavy weight first off, and especially first thing in the morning. I think most people run into trouble when they try to do big muscle groups first thing in the morning. I don't know what Jim thinks, but down in a lot of the gyms you see people doing heavy leg exercise at 6:30 a.m. Things happen when you lie flat all night and you don't warm up and your muscles aren't ready to take that load. So a good warm up is key and prevents a lot of injury. And stretching, which all of us hate to do because it doesn't show, but it actually prevents, I think, a lot of problems down the line.
Well, what you just mentioned is something I've always thought. A lot of people work out early in the morning before they go to work. I've never enjoyed that, and one reason I have told people is because I feel my body has to naturally wake up during the day. Just walking around the city or going to work, your muscles are more ready for that. Now, do you have your players train in the morning, evening? And does it matter to you?
We basically leave that up to the individual. Everyone responds differently to how their day goes. Me personally, I'm a morning person. So I like to work out in the morning, get it over with, and again, following Jonathan's guidelines of a proper warm-up on the bike or treadmill or just going for a walk or outside or something like that to warm up, and then involving or taking part in a good stretching class or stretching out before I start lifting. And then other individuals on our team are later in the day. They'll prefer to practice, get warmed up through practice and that, and then making sure that they leave feeling pumped up and ready for the next day. They go into the weight room and do a little aerobic or anaerobic workout and then lift afterwards. So everyone's different. Everyone has to feel what they feel works best for them.
So what type of warm-up is the best way? We mentioned stretching. Is that the best?
Well, I think you have to separate warm up from stretching a little bit. I can't overemphasize what Jim said about the players. Let people find their natural fit. I mean, for some people, working out heavy weights or heavier weights in the morning is okay, and if your body doesn't feel right doing it, it's probably not right for you. But to answer your question about warm-up, I think the key in warming up and getting your body acclimated to an exercise is that you have to increase one's heart rate to maybe 70% of maximum, which is, there's a basic formula, which is the 220 minus your age in years is your heart rate maximum roughly. And if you go up to about 70-80% of that and do it for 10 or 15 minutes, your body is more flexible, it's used to seeing stress, and I think it better prepare you for a workout and exercise.
So stretching then would not be a true
Stretch is
warm-up.
important, but it's a different phase of warm-up. I think the cardiovascular warm-up is really what I was referring to, and I think you have to do both.
So what is that, on the bike, on the treadmill if you're at a
You
gym?
could do exactly any one of those, depending upon what your inclination. Maybe you should vary it. Bike, stair
Jumping
machines.
jacks?
Yeah, you can do jumping jacks. It gets your heart rate up.
We've been doing jumping jacks since kindergarten, I think.
That's right.
What about squat
We do
thrust?
a lot of
Does
things
anybody
for a
do
long
the
time.
squat thrust anymore?
Probably the Russian military.
Yeah,
Guys, an example of the squat thrust now, please. No, just kidding. So would you want to then do the warm-up and then go to stretching?
Basically, that's what we try and do is get the individual to warm up, like Jonathan said, on a bike, on a treadmill, jumping rope, jumping jacks, anything that they feel comfortable with to get their heart rate up and feel like they're getting a little bit of a sweat, they're getting some beads. And then after that, the next phase is the stretching phase. We utilize, with the Rangers, two different types of stretching. We start off doing static stretching, which involves basically taking one muscle or a larger muscle group and holding the stretch in a stationary position for an extended period of time, 20, 30, 40 seconds, doing that 3 to 5 times. And then after we've stretched out the major muscle groups, then we do what's called a dynamic stretch, which is kind of like a squat thrust, and basically we might do some deep knee bends if the individual doesn't have knee problems, just taking them down, holding the stretch a little bit at the bottom, back up, down. And that's more of a functional stretching. It's taking that individual into a functional position that they're going to utilize every day on the ice, at the grocery store, when they're bending over to pick up something on the bottom shelf and that. So they're working the muscles that are working their core and that they're going to use every single day. So we take that stretching to a different level, and then we put them into the weight room.
And Jonathan, why don't you tell us about strength conditioning as being important to preventing injuries to, say, joints or ligaments?
Yes. The stability of a joint is made up by not only the bony anatomy, or for instance in the shoulder where the ball fits in the socket, but the ligaments, those tight tissues around it, and the muscles around those ligaments. And so any compromise in any one of those areas will lead to a problem. So you can control the muscles more easily than the bones and the ligaments. So if you strengthen the muscles, for instance around the shoulder, you'll make it more stable. You'll theoretically have fewer problems with instability or looseness or even tendonitis type problems, because the muscles will be better prepared. So it's easier to control the muscles, and doing exercises to make for a stronger group of muscles around the joint will probably, all else being equal, reduce the frequency of injury and problems.
And one thing before we go, I have to ask this because I suffered a couple of these injuries back in my old high school days, but the hamstring, it seems like every time you pick up a newspaper, you look at the disabled list, whether it's a hockey player, baseball player, they're out with a hamstring injury, and they're out for long periods of time. And why don't you explain what the hamstring is, and then how can you possibly ever build that up so that you are not at risk?
The hamstring muscle is basically on the back of your thigh. It's a major muscle group that helps flex the knee or bring the knee, your heel, to your butt. and it also stabilizes some of the low back and is involved in running, walking, skating, inline skating. What happens with a lot of different athletes, recreational athletes, professional athletes alike, is that muscle becomes very strong and acts as a stabilizer, and at the same time becomes very inflexible. The individual hasn't warmed up properly, or it doesn't have a proper flexibility program that they've done to work on that muscle. And what can happen is you get a strain, you get a pull in the muscle, damages either the tendinous part of the muscle or the muscle itself, and is a very difficult muscle in terms of the length of time that it takes to heal. Professional athletes, football players, basketball players, they're loading up that muscle with such a high level of impact when they're up and jumping up for a rebound, coming back down, or a lineman jumping off the line to block another player. And that muscle becomes so loaded and then has to explode. And then that's where they run into problems if the muscle's weakened by overuse injuries, or again, basically, an acute injury where it just strains itself because of inflexibility or not enough strength.
Jonathan, anything to add to that?
I think it's a unique muscle. It's very long. It has a very unique sort of anatomy to it. And again, it's part of the core muscle group, and it's used in almost any lower extremity exercise from skating to running. So it's overused. It's frequently tight. It's hooked into the low back. And so people with low back problems also have hamstring problems. So it's very true. It's frequently injured, hard to get better, but you need it to do anything in sport.
But just remember, for you folks out there, unless you're a professional athlete, you still have to show up at work with your hamstring injury. Guys, thanks a lot for joining us on the webcast talking about injury prevention. So get out to the gym, go out to the tennis courts, the basketball courts, listen to what these guys just told you, do things the right way, and you'll avoid those injuries that may put you on the disabled list. Thanks for joining our webcast. I'm David Folk Thomas. We'll see you next time.